Well, cool. And welcome to our webinar. Once again, thank you for choosing to spend some of your valuable time with us. As Hannah mentioned, we are going to be doing a showcase today of CatDV and our Adobe Premiere Pro workflows. So yeah, our objectives, if you like, for the next few moments is to run through the workflows we can do with CatDV that are available right now. And you should look out for the You Can Book Me link, which we'll put into the last few slides, so that if there are any follow-ups you'd like to do with us or the team, whether it be from a sales perspective or from an installation and support perspective, then you can just book those up, choose yourself an hour slot, and we will be more than happy to have a chat. So I guess one of the things I wanted to start off with is that not all Premiere panels are created equal. We know that there is a somewhat crowded market in the MAM and PAM business for panels for Adobe Premiere. So we had the very first one, and I think we've completely rewritten it 3 or 4 times now, and we're going to be taking a look at some of those cool new things that we think are unique to CatDV. We know a lot of people have announced some cool new things, but they haven't built them. We've been launched with these latest things for at least 3 months. So I guess it feels to me at least that our Premiere panel is a bit like cornflakes. So it was the original and it still is the best. So with that, I have to say that, of course, because it's my job. With that, we're going to talk about these 9 things in this webinar. So first off, we're going to run through core workflows with our Premiere panel, primarily for those that are connected to storage. And that can be like 100% on-premise workflow or 100% in-cloud workflow. We don't really care. The whole point is that Adobe Premiere can see the storage directly. So we don't have to have any connectivity created by CatDV. So it could be all cloud, could be all on-premise or in the facility. So first off, we're going to look at the online workflows, and then the second option, then we're going to start looking at tiered storage management, one of the things that CatDV does best, and then how to manage the restore of archived content using the CatDV panel, whilst in parallel doing your proxy-based edit. So you don't have to leave Adobe Premiere and get out of flow when you're trying to do your creative work, whilst CatDV behind the scenes are restoring masters for you. So that's some workflows that have been in place for actually several years, and we think we do pretty neat. So then we move on to some new stuff that's very relevant to the lockdown world that we currently inhabit, and some stuff that we have showed briefly before, but we're going to go into a bit more detail about. So the third thing is our remote proxy download. So being able to pull content out of a CatDV server that is not connected to storage, being able to harvest local assets and then check in and check out so that I can do some work on a project and then hand it off to Matthew or vice versa. And we'll see that going on as we proceed. And that's all very well, but then how do we actually do renders? And there's several ways of doing renders, and we'd like to talk through some of those. We can download mezzanines as high quality proxies, and we'll talk about that. So I can render on my machine, even if I'm not connected to storage. We can have a Premiere client sitting in the cloud, maybe on some virtualized desktop thing that's connected to storage. And then you can do some central rendering with Media Encoder as well. So we're going to talk through some of those. I'll do the talking and Matthew will do the demos as ever. So what we're going to try and do is to kind of step through sophistication and start simple and move on. So the first 2 things we're going to look at, this is number one, the online workflow. You can see the little architecture diagram on the left. We've got a facility that happens to have CatDV, its work of infrastructure, some storage that has both masters and proxies, and Adobe Premiere. So we're going to take a look through browsing, searching, and previewing, how we work with proxies and high-res. One of the cool things that we've got is really quick auditioning of content. So keyboard shortcuts to navigate around content with our cursor keys, JKL and space for being able to do very quick previews, even at fast speeds. We're going to be able to see metadata from CatDV, both in terms of looking at it and changing it and pushing it into Adobe. And of course, we handle not just master clips, which I know some of our competitors only handle those. We handle sequences, master clips, subclips, and markers. So we're going to take a look at that. So a pretty rich experience there. And then we'll move on to how we can then start to use that capability. But if our masters are offline, perhaps because they're archived, whether that be up to LTO, object, or cloud, we don't really care. Our demo is going to show them in cloud because it's just so much easier to to set up. So I think those are going to be the first things that we start to show, and I will hand over at that point to Matthew.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Dave. So let me just get the screen sharing going. Yeah. So the first one we're going to start with is a simple on-premise workflow, and it doesn't have to be on-premise, as Dave says. So this is Adobe Premiere is directly connected to the storage, so it can work with the masters directly. As Dave said, this could be a sort of cloud workflow still. You could be running, Premiere in on a virtual machine in a workspace or something like that with attached storage. So, but the idea is that Premiere effectively is able to access the media. So here's Adobe Premiere, and the CatDV panel is an extension. So I can load it up like any other Adobe Premiere extension, and when it loads, it's sort of dockable, and you can move it around, and in the usual way that you could with any of the Premiere panels. So you can kind of set up your workspace how you would want, or even have it set different ways in different workspaces. So the first thing it asked me to do is to log into my server. So for this first demo, I'm gonna point to a CatDV server that's running on my local machine. So I need to authenticate, something that if you've got Okta or two-factor authentication set up on your CatDV server, then the panel does support those SAML integrations that we've got as well. I don't have one set up today, so I'm going to use a local username and password, but there are options to do that. And the idea behind the panel is that what we wanted is for people not to really have to leave the application, to do the bulk of the work. So they don't need to go and open another application or use the web client. Predominantly, we wanted them to be able to do most of their workflows and creative work without leaving the Premiere application. Hence the idea behind the panel. So, I've got access to my, search, free text search, so I can just search for the word elephant and get clips back that have got elephants in them. Or I can browse as I normally do. So I've got my catalog structure down the left here, so I can go into my 4K footage, and you see I've got these sort of scrubbable thumbnails of the clips in that catalog. In the same way that if you're an existing CatDV customer, you'll already be used to, we have this concept of views, so you can have the grid style views or the thumbnail views or the film strip views as well. So, and you can kind of define them. And in the same way that you're used to with CatDV normally, you can also use the visibility rules to have a view set just for the Premiere panel. So if you want to have a different set of views exposed in the web client versus in the Premiere panel, then you can do that with the panel set functionality. So you can show different sets of metadata, both for views and panels. And as Dave said, I can kind of move around these clips, using the arrow keys. I can kind of resize the interface, to change the way that looks. So you can kind of quickly audition clips from within the panel. So at the moment, these proxies are coming from the CatDV server, so nothing's been loaded in to Premiere at this point. So you can kind of play a proxy from the CatDV server. As Dave said, you can use the keyboard shortcuts, so you can sort of speed up the scrubbing, or go backwards with the keys as well, J, K, and L, to audition the clips. And the other thing you will see is, if I go back to my grid view, I've tagged some of these clips already. So, this has got animal, giraffe, lizard, wolf. Those of you who are regular viewers of our webinars know that my animal identification is pretty lax at the best of the time. So I'll try and do my best today. But in the same way that you would in the normal CatDV web client, you get these panels. So you can have a logging panel, for example, or you could have multiple logging panels. So, if I want to set the animal on this particular clip, so I don't think I've got crocodile, I could make this pick list extensible. This one isn't on my demo system, but I'm going to categorize that as a lizard. And then you just need to press the save button up here, and you'll see that's updated the metadata. So you can do some logging from within Adobe Premiere. You don't necessarily need to go back to the web client or the desktop client to do that. Obviously, all my clips are 5-star, as you will all know, so that's a 5-star clip. So you can do some logging from within the panel itself, and But that's not to say that all of your logging has to be done in the panel. So, you know, quite a successful workflow for many of our customers is they might have loggers, you know, working in the web client, you know, setting things like markers, setting metadata, doing that sort of thing. So, you know, we can do that. So if I go to my CatDV web client, I can actually do some logging in here. So, you know, if I go to my 4K footage, here's Desert Clip 1, you can see it's got a couple of markers on it already. So, you know, I can add another marker on that particular clip. So, you know, this is a good shot, and, you know, running scene or something like that in the description. So you can kind of do that logging without somebody having to use the panel. But when I bring that clip into my project, I'm going to get all that metadata that's been logged effectively. And you can see there's actually the markers show up as well in the preview there. So in order to bring that into my Premiere project, so I've already got a blank Premiere project. I set that up before we started. But all I need to do is find the clip that I want, and I say import, and then that's going to bring that clip into Premiere, into my bin for me. And if we look at the properties of this clip in Premiere, you're going to see that it's linked, in my case, both the high-res media, so the original media, and also the proxy media. Now, in my demo, these happen to be running on my local D drive disk, but obviously if we're working in an attached storage environment, obviously those would be the references to the clip on the storage. So it's attached both sets of media for me, and it's directly linked to them. And we should be able to see it's brought in the markers for that clip. So the markers that were on that clip have also been brought into Premiere. And if I look at that clip in the source monitor window, I've also got those markers on there as well. So that's the sort of way you would get your content in. As Dave said, you know, in the web client, we do have the ability to kind of build subclips and also sequences. So if I wanted to, I could build, you know, mark an in and out point on this particular clip, and then I could actually create a subclip, and this is going to create a new clip in my catalog. So subclip 1. So that is something I could also import into Premiere. So if I go and find that in my catalog, you can actually bring that in as a subclip into Premiere as well. You'll notice that it brings the metadata. So any user metadata that you've created in CatDV will also come through. So because these have been tagged as giraffes, effectively it's filling in that giraffe column there. So those of you familiar with Premiere will know you can customize this metadata display, and you will find any of the custom user metadata fields will be listed in here, so you can add them to that view and save a view as well. So any of that sort of really good metadata that you're logging in Premiere, effectively you can bring in into your bin as well and use it in that way. So we've got time-based metadata and we've got clip-based metadata, and we can also build a sequence as well. So, you know, if I want to take a couple of clips, you know, I could select these clips here, and then I can say create sequence. So Matthew sequence, and this is going to create a very basic sequence in CatDV. Now, CatDV is not an editor, you know, we leave that to the editors of the world, but you can put together a sequence. So I can kind of trim, you know, the in and out points on these clips if I want to, you know, if I want to change this sequence. So I can change that and just tweak this sequence a little bit. And then when I'm happy with it, I can save that. And CatDV hasn't created any files under the hood. You know, it's just pure metadata. But again, that is something that I can bring into Premiere. So I can go and get Matthew's sequence and I can import that, and it will go and bring that in as a sequence.
And we see this, so, you know, you might want an assistant editor doing shot selections, marking in and outs, and just choosing the best shots before then passing them on to Craft Edit. Or a producer, we quite often see producers putting stuff together on their laptops before then sending again things through for full edit with effects and titles and all of that kind of cool stuff. So that kind of starting the edit in the web and then moving into the professional tools is something we see quite often with our customers.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know. Do you want to just put your diagram back up of the second workflow, just so we could look at it?
Certainly. Shall I just share my screen
Yeah.
just so folks can see it? Yeah. So what we've just seen there is everything on premise or on the facility. Well, that could be a cloud-based thing, as we've said. And so now what we're going to do is see that we've archived stuff with the multitude of CatDV archive capabilities, whether they be LTO with things like Quantum and ArchiWare and SpectralLogic Black Pearl, or object storage, object matrix, some of the S3 variants, Azure, Backblaze B2, doesn't really matter. But any of those kind of connected archives and tiered storages that CatDV can manage can also be operated using the Premiere panel.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So I'll go back to me. In my footage catalog here, I've got a couple of clips that are offline. So the red traffic light here in the F column is showing me that the high res is not available. So I can bring that clip into Premiere now. So I can import that clip into Premiere. And obviously Premiere is going to warn me that the high res media is offline. So that's okay. I can just say that's offline. And you'll notice though that it's still linked to the proxy. So the proxy is on my storage in the facility, and that means I can still start working with that clip. So although the original material isn't there, I can still use it in my timeline, for example, because it's got the material there. But because we've got the ability to update clips from within the panel, what you can effectively do is you can actually trigger a restore. So I've got this actions panel here, which has got some checkbox metadata fields. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say restore from archive. And this is just setting a piece of metadata that the worker, for those of you who are familiar with CatDV, the worker node is kind of this sort of engine that does things behind the scenes. So the worker node will have picked up on the fact that I've set that metadata flag, and it's actually started restoring this file, because this file actually lives on Amazon. I'm using Amazon as my archive provider here. So behind the scenes, it's now going to go and start restoring that clip effectively, and bringing it down to the original location on the storage where that clip was archived from. And then once it's been restored, effectively I can then use it in, I can relink it in Premiere, and the high res clip is there available to use. So this is a couple of hundred meg, this clip, so it's just kind of trickling down over my broadband connection at home. But hopefully that should finish restoring shortly, and you can see that it's. But meanwhile, the editor can obviously be editing, with the proxy. That's absolutely fine. So once that's finished, effectively, all I would need to do is link the media. By default, the default behavior in Premiere when I press the locate button is it's going to take me to the location where it thought the clip used to be, which is where CatDV will have restored it to. And I just hit OK, and then it's relinked the high res back to that clip effectively. So then when I come to do my final render, I've restored all of the media that I needed, again, without having to leave the CatDV application to do that restore. So I think that was everything we were going to cover on Workflow 2, wasn't it, Dave?
Yeah, I think so. Very good. Okay, well, let me grab back control, and I'll share my screen again. So that's just what we've looked at. Now let's move on to talk about our third workflow, which is when our Adobe Premiere Pro workstation is not connected to storage. And as most of us know, Adobe can't work with cloud URLs, and it certainly can't work with the LTO, tape IDs, and all that kind of stuff. It needs files at the moment. I'm sure that will change over time. But at the moment, it needs to be able to work with files. How do we help it to do that when Premiere doesn't have access to that storage directly? Well, we got the remote proxy download that we launched at the very beginning of lockdown. And what that allows us to do is to use that same kind of workflow that we just saw, but when we pull down content into Premiere from the CatDV panel, to also bring down proxies from CatDV and download those to the remote workstation. which is great. So the editor can work with proxies. Bandwidth constraints aren't really there. The egress charges, if it's all content that's being hosted in the cloud, are quite small. And it's great. They can do a nice proxy-based edit, and they've got a nice low-res version they can work with. Cool. I mean, it is cool, but then what do they do with this low-res thing? Because you don't really want to render a low-res thing. You want nice, good content. So we need a few more pieces in order to make this really useful. The first of those pieces is to be able to harvest local content. So if we've got some creative people, they might be creating some new stuff. They might be doing some After Effects stuff, which creates some new effects, or some titles, some overlays, lower thirds, whatever, that get thrown into their Premiere bin. And our Premiere panel can recognize that content's been added to a Premiere project and then can manage the upload of that content back to CatDV, so back to the facility, so that that content is then owned and managed by the organization whose system it is, rather than just sitting out unmanaged in all these laptops and workstations, which could be in hundreds of locations with the way we're working with lockdown. So, okay, so we can download the proxies, we can get the new stuff back in. Those are good starts. Then even better, we check in our project. So if we check in our project that's got our been based on our proxies, check it back into the facility, and what that little icon in the facility is meant to say is that CatDV is now managing that project file with all the content being referred to in it. So we can check that content in. CatDV knows, therefore, what's in each Premiere project file, and we can do all sorts of cool stuff with that. So for a start, we can open it on somebody else's machine, and that's the checkout thing we're going to come into in a minute. But also we can archive and restore all the content relating to a project, because CatDV knows everything that's in a project. So a little bit of customization. We might choose to make it a bit easier to do, but with JavaScript lets us do that with the worker. Say, archive everything on this project, restore everything on this project. Pretty cool. And then similarly, clip usage metrics. So if I want to see if a particular clip's been used or overused across a number of my productions that have been through this workflow, then we can do that too. Put together little counters to say how many times has this clip been used and in which project has it been used. Again, a bit of customization. We had customization in JavaScript as another CatDV show a few weeks ago, and I would encourage you to look at that and or talk to us if you want to do stuff like that. And then, as I said, then we now have our checkout thing. So the only difference between 5 and 6 is the top bar is a different color, and that's trying to say, okay, they're different people in different places that are doing the collaboration. And then, so I can check that out on my machine, say, if Matthew had started some stuff off, and then I can then continue to do some work with it. And of course, all those other things we talked about. So downloading proxies to my machine to be able to play that content and do the proxy-based edit. If I create some new content of my own, being able to upload that to the central facility, and really getting some collaboration going without having to have this connection through to the facility, without having to have a VPN and all that kind of complicated stuff. We could just use HTTPS, two-factor, Okta kind of stuff, so you have a nice secure way of being able to remotely collaborate without having to use VPNs. So that's probably about time for another demo, I think, Matthew.
Yep, thanks, Dave. Already, so I've now connected to a different system. So before I was connected to my local on-premise system, if you like. Now I'm going to connect to a remote system. So I don't have access to the media anymore. So I've actually logged into a different CatDV system. You'll see that there's different catalogs and production groups here. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new Premiere project, or I would if I could find the right option. There we are. So I'm going to call this episode 1, as the project name. So to start with, you have to create a project, and I'm just going to create that locally in my downloads folder, as all good editors do, obviously. So once I've done that, I need to tweak some of the options in my panel once it's created that project. So you have this little settings cog up here in the top right. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it that I want to enable remote working. So this is telling the Premiere panel that I won't have direct connection to the media. So therefore, it will need to download the proxies to my local machine for me. So I check that, and I need to give it a path to where it's going to store those files when it downloads them. So in my case, I've just put that in a temp folder on my C drive. It could be on a fast external hard drive, or it works on Mac and Windows as well. The other thing I want to turn on is check in and check out, and this basically turns on some additional buttons in the panel that's going to allow me to check in and check out the projects. There is a final option, which is to check in markers and user fields. So this is more if you're going to add additional logging data in Premiere, so additional markers, or you're going to change things like, before we saw the animal in the bin, or the location in the bin, and you want to change your logging data there. Don't turn that on by default, because often people want CatDV to have a set of markers that are kind of shared between the team, but they might want their editors to add some additional markers during the edit, but they don't necessarily want to push all those markers back. So we've kind of made that configurable, so you can choose whether you want to push the markers you've added in Premiere back. So I'm going to leave that turned off for the moment. So I've got my new Premiere project file called episode 1, and in the same way, I can go and find some clips to use. So as I say, this is a different system now. So I've got Desert Clip 1 and Desert Clip 2. So once I've found those and I'm happy with those, I can then import those into my system. And it's going to warn me that the high res is offline, so that's okay. I can offline them, but you'll see it's actually transferring the proxies now in the background. So it's going to the CatDV server, and it's going and fetching those proxies and bringing them to my local machine. So if we look at one of the properties of the clip, you'll see that the high-res location, the media path, is the sort of location back in the facility. So mine's a Linux server, so this is sort of Linux-style path. But the proxy media is actually located on my local machine in that temporary file. And the reason we don't want to change the high-res path is that we wanted to allow workflows so that you can go and do rendering back in the facility, for example. So, if you've got, Premiere clients that you can remote into back at base, or you've got Adobe Media encoders or things like that, we didn't want to, mess around with the high-res path in the Premiere project. So I can start building a timeline, and I don't think I'm going to be getting hired as an Adobe Premiere anytime soon, Dave. So I think you're probably safe for a bit. Again, it's brought in all those sort of markers and things that that are on that clip. I can rename my timeline. So I'll call this, I don't know, version 1 or something. So once I finish building up my Premiere project, I can then use the CatDV panel to kind of send this Premiere project back to the CatDV server. And this is going to allow another user, in my case, Dave's going to be my guinea pig as usual. So that's going to allow Dave to use that Premiere project. Before I do, what I need to do is I need to file it in a catalog. So everybody who's familiar with CatDV will know that catalogs are our kind of unit of collecting things together, but basically clips or assets go into catalogs. And in the same way, when I check in my project, I need to identify where that's going to live. So I've got a production group here called projects, and I've got something called CatDV in there, webinars, and I've got episode 1. It's got nothing in it at the moment, it's blank. So what I can do is I can check in that project. So Premiere is going to save that project file, and then it's going to upload that Premiere project file to the CatDV server. Okay, and you'll see it's now appeared in the catalog, and it actually has a path basically where it uploaded it. So if we swap over to our web client now, you should see that again in my catalog structure, I've got my projects production group here. I've got episode 1, and I've now got my Premiere project. We've added some special metadata fields that you can add to your panels, including one that will actually show the contents of that Premiere project. So just to explain how that's working, we're not inspecting the Premiere project file to pull that data out. That's we've been told that's not the correct way of doing things by Adobe. What we're doing is when we check in that project, we're kind of sending all the clip IDs up to the server at the point that we check it in. But what it does mean is I can actually click on these links, and it will take me straight to that clip within my CatDV web interface, so I can see what's linked to in that project. And as Dave alluded to before, that's also going to now allow us to build workflows where you can say, make sure everything in a particular project is archived, or, do counters for saying, Desert Clip 1 is used in 20 projects and things like that. So once it's checked in, you know, it's left my machine, it's been uploaded to my CatDV server. So that should allow Dave now to pick it up on his system and check it out effectively.
Very good. So I guess that's over to me. And
I'm afraid so, Dave.
My
it's your moment to shine.
My Premiere skills are going to come to the fore, aren't they? So first off, so this is my Adobe Premiere. Oh, this is not going so good, is it? Let's try that. Log it. Oh, bear with me. I'm going to go and find my password. Oh dear. Let's try. There we go. I must have had the wrong password. So I just logged in. Got my nice avatar. You can see it.
I like how you hid your screen in true streamer fashion there, Dave, so we don't get your online banking details as well, and people are starting to empty your current account. So that was well done. Yeah, nice.
So it's the same. Obviously, I'm looking at the same system as the one that we were just looking at there with Matthew's system. And here is our project, CatDV webinars, episode 1, catalog in CatDV, and I can see the project that was just checked in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to check that out. And what CatDV is going to do is tell me everything is off. Premiere is going to tell me everything offline, which it is because I've only got the proxies. And then CatDV behind the scenes, as you just saw there, has then downloaded proxies so that I can actually play the content, which is pretty neat. So then what might I want to do? Well, I can mess around with the timeline and change what's in. Have we got a slate in the system? I could put like an end slate or something.
Yeah, I've been working hard in After Effects, Dave. I've created an absolute cracker. It's called end slate. Is
it called end slate? Okay. End slate. Okay, so I'm going to add that into my project. Saying it's offline. Very cool. Now, this time it seems to have come in without having the proxy connected. I'm just going to force it to get that proxy, if you don't mind. So
that's an interesting thing to talk about. So Dave's using a function we've got there called attach proxies. And this came from one of our customers that, you know, very much they'd been using Premiere before they had CatDV. So they kind of had lots of projects, and but they'd not been created using this check-in and check-out process that we're demonstrating at the moment. And one of the things they said to us was, wouldn't it be really cool if we could go and now link those proxies to our legacy files? So their kind of workflow is they would open up the Premiere project file while connected to the CatDV server, but then they can relink the proxies. And basically it will go through all the clips in the bin and it will ask the CatDV server, have you got this high-res file? And if so, what's the proxy for it? It will return the proxy value and then it will download that proxy. So that's just helped them, you know, work in a slightly different way remotely. So yeah, it's worth showing that. Yeah.
Cool. So then I'm going to drag my slate into the end. Oh, better put it on the right track, otherwise my chief editor gets angry. Oh, it is a lovely piece of After Effects.
It took me hours that, Dave. Don't know.
Yeah, very good. So cool. What am I going to do now? I might save that locally. Very good. But then in CatDV, of course, I'm going to then check that back in. Oh, okay. Before I check in, I must select a target catalog. That is true. That is true. I do need to tell it where it's going to go, because of course I found that that end slate somewhere else. I'm going to now go back to my catalog and say, hey, let's check it into the right place. And of course, if somebody else tried to check this project out, CatDV would tell them. So we can see when a piece of when a project is checked out in CatDV, we can see that in the metadata in the web client and desktop client, and CatDV uses it when trying to check things out, and will tell you. I mean, you can override it if you really want to. So two people can work on the same thing at the same time, but clearly one at a time is easier. So I'm going to check in anyway. Here we go. And that project is then published back up to the CatDV server. So, you know, if you want to just kind of prove that it worked, then I could ask Matthew to show us it arriving on his system, perhaps. And it's probably worth noting that I'm using a Mac, he's using Windows, and I think you mentioned the server was running on Docker, so Linux essentially. So, you know, another cool capability of CatDV is that we try and handle all that rubbish so that creative users can just get on with their job, and CatDV can help all the kind of infrastructure that sits behind this to get out of the way and to enable them to work and be creative. So anyway, back to you, Matthew.
Okay, so Share my screen again. Bear with me. Zoom is having a moment. Yeah, so I can go now check out that version of the project that Dave's uploaded. So again, I go navigate it in my structure. Something we didn't mention earlier, but something that people find quite useful in Premiere workflows is clip lists. So, you know, if you've got people getting good shots or finding material for your editors, then you can use these clip lists and they appear in the panel as well. So you could have somebody in the web client finding and selecting shots and material. They could add it to a clip list and then they're available in that Premiere panel. So all the editor would need to do is go and find that clip list and then, you know, bring the clips in from there. So that's quite a useful thing to mention. So I should be able to go and check out that project now. And obviously, it originated on my machine, but it's now going to go and download the version that Dave checked in effectively. And we're going to have to offline all the media. But I've now got Dave's version of the timeline, which has got my wonderful end slate in. Now, those of you who are familiar with Premiere will know I can kind of do a render of that now. So, you know, I can export that timeline. And Premiere is going to warn me. It's going to say, hey, you know, your high res is offline. Is that what you want to do? So, you know, as I say, we've maintained the high res media path so that you could do that render back with a machine that is connected to the storage. We didn't want to break that linkage, but you can do a rough cut. So you could edit, you know, you could do a render out with that proxy and then you could upload that to your CatDV server using the, you know, the web uploader for somebody to have a review and approve on. Or as we'll come on to talking about in a minute, you could potentially even have, rather than using your web proxies, your H.264 proxies, you could actually have a different set of downloaded proxies for Premiere, which could be a sort of mezzanine format, which would still have to be downloaded to the editor's local remote machine, but would give you a higher quality render, for example. So I guess we should talk about that next, Dave. Yeah.
Very cool. Let me do that. So I'll share my screen again. So exactly that. So as Matthew said, what we've just been looking at is H.264 proxies coming down, but Adobe Premiere is pretty clever. Adobe Premiere can work with ProRes proxies and it can work with DNX proxies, and CatDV can handle those really well as well. In fact, you can make the ProRes ones. So if, for example, you wanted to be able to do your renders remotely, so I've got users working from home, not connected to storage, but we do have some mezzanines because everyone's kind of moved everything to a house format, and CatDV's had all the content coming in. It's flipped everything to a nice ProRes, high quality format, as well as H.264 for playing in web clients and panels and such like. Then we could tell CatDV that the Premiere proxies to use are actually ProRes proxies, and they could be quite high quality, so they're certainly good enough for doing a render, house format stuff. So we do that, and you can do your rendering remotely. Clearly, you've got bandwidth issues, which you may or may not be a problem for you, but the option is there to be able to do your remote editing, not mess about with the file paths of the masters, so you can still open that project file and be able to edit it on the premise or in the facility, but you can also then download and render locally, which is pretty neat, really neat, actually. So that's number 7. Number 8, of course, if we've done our edit that we've just been looking at with our H.264 proxies, so let's go back to those, and we happen to have a Premiere workstation in the facility, then because we've got both paths in our project file in Premiere, the proxy and the high res, then we just open the high res on the facility and it can immediately link to that content, render it, edit it, and we're good to go. So you can just have different users in different places being able to use that project pretty seamlessly. So that's the 8th option. And then the 9th option is something we showed on an earlier webinar. It's creative collaboration around our Web3 announcement, is simply to use, rather than using a Premiere in the facility, is to use an Adobe Media Encoder. And we can throw things into a watch folder. So what can we throw into a watch folder? We can throw Final Cut XML, and we can throw the Adobe project file into the watch folder, and Media Encoder will encode it into the destination we set up. And then, of course, when it appears in that destination, our CatDV worker can pick it up, can ingest it, and put it into the right place in the CatDV system so that it can then be used for review and approve and trigger a whole pile of other automations that are the subject of other webinars in this series. So quite a lot of flexibility around the whole rendering thing. And I think that kind of shows the end-to-end from content acquisition, creation, whether you're working on premise, in a facility, in the cloud, remotely, being able to handle masters, mezzanines, and proxies. I hope that kind of explains a little bit why we think we have the cornflakes, the original and best Premiere integration in the business. So I think, Matthew, that's all the content that we wanted to cover today.
Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah. I mean, I guess I sort of having a quick look at the chat and stuff. Obviously, people have said, there's lots of different workflows that you can do with Premiere. That's exactly right. That's what we wanted. We didn't, I think those of you who've watched our webinars before will have known we don't want to force people into doing things in a particular way, and what's right for you in your facility. I think that's probably best answered with a conversation with us, really, and kind of, we can look at those different ways and what sort of problems you're trying to solve. And that's not to say that, that is our final version of the Premiere panel. I don't think it will be. I'm sure there will be.
Well, no, I mean, our Premiere panel is evolving constantly. I mean, some of the things that we've been showing today weren't there 2 months ago, and I think that is where we differ from some of our competitors. CatDV is never finished. We're forever challenging ourselves to do more with it. And part of the reason that we would like to have follow-up conversations as one-to-ones is because we learn from our customers. And you'll have heard me say this time and time again. We try to have 2 of those and 1 of those. So that we listen to what folks want to do with CatDV and our tools, and we try to make the product better. In fact, check in and check out came from an amazing customer that was saying, hey, I want to do large-scale workflows and collaboration across quite large teams of editors, 50 editors. How do I do that and carve up projects and enable people to collaborate? And that was based on some really good innovative thinking between our 2 organizations, and that resulted in something that now is I'm really pleased with. And John, particularly our chief architect, has had this under his wing for a while, and it's a really cool piece of capability. So that's a nice segue into the book us up, and there's the URL. It'll also be in the follow-up with the recording link that'll come out after this. But if you want to book us up for an hour to talk about how you can use Adobe Premiere differently in your organization or extend your existing CatDV system, it can be a hey, I've got some licenses already, because the Premiere panel, if you've already got some desktop seats, you've got a Premiere panel for any machine that desktop CatDV is installed on. So you might well have some licenses even if you didn't know it, if you have some desktop seats. If you want to learn how to use them, how to set them up, book us up. If you want to buy some more, book us up. If you just want to understand how to move things to the cloud so you can do some of these remote workflows, book us up. That's what we're there for. I think that's becoming really popular, actually. We're getting so much interaction with our stakeholders through those conversations. It's great. So please don't hold back. Next week, our little robot's back. It's been a little while since we first launched our AI integrations with Microsoft and with Google. We have a brand new one, which is even better because time moves on. And it turns out when you invest millions and millions of dollars into AI and machine learning, that these huge internet giants turn out to do some really pretty cool stuff. So there's all sorts of stuff about being able to identify speakers and objects and draw boxes around things and all of that. So I'll be showcasing or previewing our new AWS integration next week, as well as talking about metadata enrichment. So we'd encourage anybody to come along if you're interested in that. If you have archive projects archive tapes that you want to be able to give a first pass analysis to, speech to text, image, and even people and celebrity detection, all of that will be on the agenda for next week. So pretty cool. Right, so then we're on to Q&A. So Hannah, I wonder if you can help us out and help to MC the questions as they come in, please.
Yeah, of course. So we're going to run through some of the questions. Just a reminder, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So if you want to send in any more as we're going through, please do. So the first question that came in early on is, do our sequences include handles?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that.
No, I have to double check that. I don't specifically know which handles, but it will.
So I'm probably not answering the right question, but if we send in a sub clip, then we send in the whole clip with the in and out points mark. So Premiere then handles just showing those. But if you want to be able to adjust those in and out points, then because Premiere's got the whole clip, it can do so. If that's answering the right question.
When you bring a sequence in, it brings all the required clips in as well. So I guess maybe the question was, can you then kind of, is it not just bringing in a portion of that clip, it's bringing in the whole clip?
It's bringing in the whole thing with the in and out points marked, so you can then vary them. But we might not be answering the right question. If that is the case, do please book us up for next week and we'll try again.
Excellent. You may have answered this, but apologies, I was trying to read the questions as we went through. So when uploading and downloading projects, is there project locking?
We have soft locking, so when somebody checks a project out, it will log which user has checked it out, and if I've got it checked out and Dave tries to check it out, it will warn him and say Matthew's got this checked out, but it won't. It doesn't enforce it. It's soft locking, so you can either say cancel, or you can say, yeah, I'd still like to have that project, please.
We keep some records as well, don't we, Matthew? So CatDV records who checked it in originally.
Yeah, a bit like the sort of clip history that we have. I can probably show it. A bit like the clip history that we have on an item. You can actually see, the project checkout history, so you can see which user. It's my head. No, it's not okay. You can see which users checked it in and checked it out and things like that. So we do have that as well.
Cool.
Wonderful. Is there a setting in the panel to tell which proxies you wanted to bring in?
Good. Not question. Currently. But we had exactly that conversation with John earlier today, who is the chief architect on this piece of CatDV, and we all decided that would be a really cool thing to have. So being able to say, hey, I want to be able to pull down just the H.264s, and then maybe on somebody else's workstation who happens to have a better internet connection at home, they could say, I want the mezzanines, please, and do the renders there. So I think that would be a really cool extension.
And somebody else had a question about watermark proxies. I guess their H.264 web proxies are watermarked, and they wanted to bring in a different proxy. Those of you who are familiar with CatDV will know you've got your media store configuration. So you can actually tell the Adobe Premiere panel to use a different proxy path rather than the web proxy. So I guess in that case where your web proxies were watermarked, you would need to use your worker to generate some non-watermarked proxies that Premiere could then use, and you would use your media store configuration to say use these instead of the web proxies.
Yep. We've got a question about people working offline and remotely. So if an offline remote user creates a new I'm assuming After Effects file and cuts it into the remote sequence, does it create a proxy locally and then push it to the central server? And then part B, does it then remind everyone that a full res is needed at some point?
I'll let Matthew take that one.
So the first part was, does it push the proxy?
Yeah, so does it create a proxy if you bring a new item into a remote sequence?
Well, I guess if you've done the After Effects render on your local machine, then that will have created the output on your local machine. So this is what Dave was sort of alluding to with the upload of that. But in terms of actually getting the original After Effects files back, that will be a slightly different workflow, I guess.
Yeah, but it's okay. So let's imagine we've made a mod file with some transparency in it, and we've cut that into our Premiere project as a finished thing. CatDV would upload the master file to its central system, and then we'd set up some workflows there to be able to decide how to handle that. So where to file it on storage, whether to make a proxy of it, and then when people downloaded it to their local machine elsewhere, then that proxy would then come with it when it was required. So there is some pathing fun to have there, because of course the master path, when you've created something locally, is your local machine. So we are looking at what is there we can do to automatically connect the masters back at base, so the pathing is good and we can keep Adobe Premiere happy. That's just another one of those things that we.
I guess it's the age-old relinking problem, isn't it? You know, somebody creates something on their local machine, the pathing's all right for their machine, they send the Premiere file to somebody else, and obviously then the pathing is wrong. Obviously, one way to solve that problem is to use CatDV to ingest the material and then bring it through that way, because then you can be sure that the pathing is right. But we didn't want to completely preclude the other workflow. But yeah, it's something we're looking into.
So one of the things we're looking at is when you open that content on a new workstation, can the panel recognize that the media path is not valid for that particular workstation, and then ask CatDV to correct it? Because everything we have to do to interact with the Adobe project has to be in the panel. That's Adobe's rules. Anybody that tries to parse Adobe project files and read them or even change them are breaking Adobe's rules, and Adobe tell us that they reserve the right to break that at their will, because it's not a public API. So that's the kind of thing that that's in the works at the moment. And if you have those kind of needs, then talk to us again, because the more people that tell us they need stuff, the quicker we get stuff done.
Excellent. Next question is the project area on Premiere that shows the user-defined fields. Is there a way to save and share the display to other users to save making it individually?
Good question. I had a quick look. You can save those metadata views on your local machine. I don't know how you then export them and share them around with the rest of the team. But I know you can save them on your local machine. There might be a way to get them out somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, it might be worth us having a chat with Adobe about that, because I know that we when we're setting up this webinar, we found ourselves recreating those views every so often, didn't we? So yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Somebody else has written in and says you can export preferences if they're not mistaken. So there should be.
So if they're bundled up with the Adobe preferences, then hopefully they should export as well. Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Alex.
I think we've got time for a couple more questions. Like Dave said, we've got a You Can Book Me, so if we haven't managed to get to yours, you can book in a chat to our team that way. So the last question was just clarifying what you've been talking about. If somebody's editing with a proxy but puts in effects, transitions, color corrections on the proxy edit and then flips to their original footage, do all of those effects stay?
That's the idea, yeah. So you know, it's a sort of online offline workflow, so you should be able to build your sequence. Everything should stay, but it's obviously then using the high quality media.
Yeah, so that's right. So let's talk about that a tiny bit. So when you do a sequence in CatDV, it's cut only. It does obviously respect subclips and in and out points on those clips. And when you originally bring that into Premiere, then you can drag it into a timeline, and there it is. After then, you start doing cuts and edits and titles and all the other cool stuff that Adobe can do. Then you check it in, and what you're actually checking in is the Adobe file. So we then don't muck with that. And the edit that you're doing, the craft edit, that's the Pucker edit, is then disconnected from that original sequence that was just pushed in. And then you're just in Premiere, right? So all we're doing is then serving up the Premiere file and the proxies to other users so that they can then do the craft edit exactly as they would normally. So we don't break anything in when you have creatives doing cool stuff.
But I think maybe people, if they're not familiar with using proxies to edit in Premiere, you don't have two different timelines. Effectively, you know, it's the one timeline. It's just substituting which bit of video it's using for the playback and the preview. And even as you saw, it will allow you to do a render with the proxies. If you're a facility that does a lot of multi-track audio, it is worth thinking about that as well. And obviously, if you need to be able to you know, switch between audio tracks and things, then if your proxy hasn't got the full set of audio on it, then that's a consideration that you need to bear in mind.
Yeah, and then that might well be. I mean, of course, if you've got proxies that are ProRes proxies, then you can start putting in more audio tracks and do it that way. But sound like
I guess it's a sort of mezzanine versus you just use what you've already got with CatDV for your web proxy, right. Sort of.
So H.264 proxies just have a normal stereo pair, I think, in them. And so if you want to start doing multi-audio tracks, then using ProRes mezzanines or something like that sounds good. And the way we do multi-tracks with still H.264 web proxies is to have multiple proxies and have audio proxies. So there's multiple files behind the scenes that CatDV is managing to be able to fake the audio tracks. So yeah, that definitely sounds like that is worth a conversation with one of our consultants to see how we can help.
Wonderful. And I think we've got time for one last question. So are we going to cover Final Cut and or Resolve in future webinars?
Yes, absolutely. So we wanted to focus on Premiere, and look, we've used up almost a whole hour talking just about Adobe workflows, so I think that does show that it was worthwhile. We had the very first asset management panel for, sorry, that's not a panel, it's a workflow extension for Apple Final Cut Pro. And it doesn't have quite the same capabilities. It's much more like options 1 and 2, where we're browsing and bringing content into CatDV. So yes, we can certainly run one on the Premiere side. And as Hannah alluded to, we have in the works a Resolve panel that is being built at the moment. We don't have a date for it yet because we don't commit to dates. But yeah, as soon as we have those, in fact, as soon as we have that, we'll do a webinar on that. It might be worth doing that at the same time as the Apple one. Good suggestion. Yeah, thank you.
Great questions today, so thanks everyone.
Lots of questions in. So yeah, like I said, if we haven't had time to get to your questions or you think of any more, you can email them into sales@squarebox.com or support@squarebox.com. One of our team will get back to you by email, or you can use the You Can Book Me link. There's a new little box that says, what do you want to talk about? If you fill that out, then we'll know whether to put you in touch with a techie person or a salesperson or both. I think that's all. So otherwise, thank you for taking time to join us today, and we hope to see you again at one of our upcoming webinars.
Wonderful.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Cheers.
CatDV.